So continuing with our paper, 11, a firm operating in an imperfectly competitive market produces at the level of output where the PED, at the level of output where the PED for its product is equals to unity, so is equals to 1. So what has the firm achieved? Now for this you have to recall some of your AS stuff. So if it's price, it's quantity, it is your demand curve, which is downward sloping because it's an imperfectly competitive market. Now what you need to know that one section of the demand curve used to be elastic. The other section used to be inelastic, and there was a mathematical explanation to this. I'm not going to go into great detail. And this used to be unit elastic or unity. Now the idea here was to maximize total revenue, you had to decrease price to maximize total revenue in the elastic region, and you had to increase price to maximize total revenue in the inelastic region. Hence, if you're producing at the point where PED is equals to 1 or PED is unity, this was the point where total revenue was maximized. So if you knew this, it was easy to just pick C, where you have maximum revenue. 12, the table shows the 5 firm concentration ratios for a selection of industries in an economy. So the idea here is that you take the top 5 firms and you have to see how much of the entire industry's output do they produce. So if it okay, so which gives you an idea as to of the market concentration basically. So what can be concluded from the table? The firms are of equal size in the steel industry and the water supply industry. So the top 5 firms have the same proportion of the total sales in steel and water supply. I'm not too sure if you can say they're of equal size.
Yeah, you can. I don't think you can judge the size on the basis
size
of
का you can't no share है हाँ
size का कोई वो नहीं रहेगा ना.
Yeah, so it's difficult to say, to judge size, and like I'm not even sure what they're saying. If they're saying are all of these firms are equal size, if that, then it's even more wrong.
Supply are of equal size. But
Yeah.
just because the like
wait नहीं ऐसे they're not even saying this, they're saying कि अपनी ये सारी अलग-अलग इंडस्ट्रीज है और इन सब में अलग-अलग फर्म्स होंगे बहुत सारे which are at the same size. वो ये सब अलग-अलग इंडस्ट्रीज है, which is not true anyway.
Yeah, so we can just cross that out. The printing industry is more competitive than the tobacco industry, and that's fine, I believe, because the idea here is the top 5 firms in the tobacco industry produce 95% of overall output, making it in a way a sort of an oligopoly. In printing, the top 5 firms only produce 12%, which means clearly the power isn't just in the hands of like 5 firms, it's spread out. So it's going to be more competitive. The tobacco industry, you can't judge if it's a monopoly. You can tell it's definitely an oligopoly because you're looking at 5 firms, right? For monopoly, 1 firm needs to have such power. There are more firms in the tobacco industry. Well, you can never really tell about the number of firms, so you can just cancel that out because, well, there could be really small firms even in the tobacco industry. And if you look at the water supply industry, this is just the top 5 firms. There could be millions of other firms having very small market share. So you can't really judge just looking from this table. Did I take a? Yeah, I took B. Okay, so 13, the diagram shows the initial cost and revenue curves of a profit maximizing monopolist. So what output will the firm produce if the government fixes the price at OP? So this is your price. And remember, now this is your new MR curve because what's price? If you have a fixed price, it's like the additional. If you get an additional price for a particular quantity, that is literally the amount you're adding to total revenue. So like if you have total revenue is price into quantity, and I'm saying let's look at the additional. If I'm trying to look at 1 more unit, then price. If I'm looking at 1 more unit, then your price would be equals to your MR, and that would be your, in a way, a constant. So this horizontal line is basically your MR curve because that's how much you're adding to total revenue with an increase in 1 unit of output, which makes this your profit maximizing point because MC is equals to MR. So how much output will the firm produce? Okay, Instead of charging all of the customers the same price, the firm decides to charge different prices in different markets. So price discrimination. How is this likely to affect consumer surplus and the firm's marketing costs? So your consumer surplus should decrease, because what the idea is, the firm uses price discrimination in order to capture the consumer surplus and convert it into producer revenue. The firm's marketing costs should increase. What do you guys think?
Yeah, it should increase because different markets में जा रहे हैं तो सबकी individual marketing cost होगा.
Yeah, so they'd have to market more in like 2 different markets. Like in another market, they'd have to market as well. So the marketing costs, the advertisement costs, and all should increase. So demand curve, supply of a perfectly competitive industry is taken over by a monopolist. The monopolist's long-run average cost curve, LRACM, is identical to the supply curve of the perfectly competitive industry. So it's going to be this. What will be the effects of the takeover on profit and allocative efficiency? And your demand curve should really still be this, because the demand shouldn't really change that much. Like, they haven't told us that demand changes, so we'll just assume that the demand curve is the same, which means your MR curve is something of this sort. It falls twice as fast. So MR should be equal. If LRAC is horizontal, this is the same as saying this is also should also be equal to MC, because as you add one particular unit, if it's a horizontal, then your marginal has to be equals to your average, because your average is neither increasing, it's neither decreasing. So for that, if your marginal was above average, average would increase, which is not happening. If your marginal was below average, average would decrease, which is not happening. So marginal has to be equals to average. That's one way to look at it, which means this is the profit maximizing point. So takeover on profit and allocative efficiency. So your profit itself should increase, right? Because your monopolist obviously makes more profit, and
profit should decrease, don't you think? Because अगर the MC was upward sloping, so price should have been somewhere ऊपर की तरफ कहीं.
This is your price you're charging. So I don't believe so, man. Like, because if you think about it, your MC is this. Your MC is horizontal, and you're charging a higher price for a little less output. I think your cost, your total revenue, I'm not too sure about the effect on total revenue here, but your total revenue, I can't say, but your cost should be decreasing then, right? So, and if you're producing where MC is equal to MR, I don't know, isn't it intuitively obvious that a monopolist would make more profit than it would make supernormal profits? And in fact, what are we doing? Wait. We're just going around, we're just babbling away here. This is your average revenue at the particular point. This is your average cost. This is your area of supernormal profits. If you look at it just as comparatively, so in a perfectly competitive industry, you do not make supernormal profits. You just make normal profits. Like somewhere around this, in fact, you would make here. So that's normal profits. So, yeah, I don't know what happened. Anyway, so profit obviously increases. If you look at allocative efficiency comes when price is equals to MC, and that doesn't happen, because now what's happened is this was your MC. So before you were allocatively efficient, now price is increased, so you're not pricing where price is equals to MC. So allocative efficiency decreases, which gives you C.
SN.
Yes.
Isn't, अगर तुम देखो पर price, aren't you having a price that is equals to MC?
No.
If you see PC.
I'm okay. So this was your price before. Let's say this was your MR. So your MC is the same. Your MC is this. Your MC is this horizontal curve. So your PC would in fact be pricing it at MC. If you're basically taking this as MC is equals to MR, this quantity, you use a demand curve to find out this particular price. So this price is not equal to MC, right?
अच्छा मैंने question सही I get.
Okay. Which government microeconomic policy is not usually aimed at correcting allocative inefficiency in an economy? So you can cross out those that are aimed at correcting allocative inefficiency. So anti-monopoly legislation is aimed at doing so. Congestion charges is aimed at recall market failure. So like you get rid of monopolies or monopoly power. You get rid of stuff like externalities. You get rid of pollution taxes, subsidies for agriculture producers. I guess that's your answer, because you normally don't use subsidies to subsidies for agricultural producers. You normally don't use that in order to correct allocative efficiency. We're not saying that you can't use that. You don't usually do so, but you do use congestion charges to reduce externalities so that people use buses. You do use pollution taxes so to reduce externalities, and you do use this to limit monopoly behavior, monopoly power, exploitation of consumers. So we can go with D. A country has a negative income tax. In the diagram, the curve NT shows the country's initial tax schedule. So that's this. What would cause the tax schedule to shift to NT1? So to this basically, which basically means that at at zero income you're going to be the tax revenue. Well, so this is tax rate, right?
ऐसा एक income पे देख लो एक for the same income you're now paying a higher tax.
Okay, so for like something along these lines, you're now paying definitely your tax rate has gone up for you. Instead of like something that like 2%, now it'll be 5% or whatever it is. So a higher marginal tax rate, I guess you can just go with A then. A more equal distribution of income. I don't see how a more equal distribution of income would necessarily. I mean, how would that change? Yeah, it wouldn't cause it. Yeah, it wouldn't cause it. An increase in household disposable income. No, and if you look at increase in income, would be something like this. So you would just extend the line, not change it. If your marginal propensity to consume changes, how does that affect your tax rate? Not really, right? So because here your gradient clearly shows the relationship between your tax rate and to income. So tax rate is something that the government would change, not something that can happen just because you suddenly decide to spend more. If you're spending more, your tax revenue might change, but the tax rate won't. The information in the table is taken from a country's national income accounts. What is the value of imports? So I believe you can assume that this country is at equilibrium. So the idea at equilibrium is national income is equals to aggregate expenditure, and aggregate expenditure is equals to C plus I plus G plus X minus M. So you can just quickly pop in the values. If national income is 600, then aggregate expenditure is also 600. Do any of you have a calculator?
I do.
So hopefully you can calculate. You just solve
120.
and you get B. सही calculate किया है ना?
वापस कर लेता हूँ.
Then that'll be 200, 120, 20.
120.
Sorry. Which represents an injection into a country's circular flow of income. So injections would either be so government expenditure, investments, exports, maybe not in that particular order, but whatever. So corporate taxes, leakage, interest payments on government bonds is just there to distract you. Payment of dividends to foreign shareholders, no. The What's going on? The repayment of bank loans,
Gonna be C, na?
foreign shareholders. How is that an injection? The payment of dividends.
Wait, wait, wait.
Let's read it again. So corporate taxes is a no. Interest payments on government bonds. So if you're getting interest payments on government bonds, is that a way, in a way, is government spending on you? I'm not too sure.
I think they mean कि like if people buy bonds from the government, उसके I think it should be D.
Yeah, yeah. And the reason is because it in a very really messed up way looks like government expenditure, because the government is paying, is spending on in the economy, spending on you in a way, because you bought a bond, and now you're getting interest off of it. So like the bond value is still there, like that the principal amount is still there, but you're getting additional interest on it, which is basically the government paying for on you, the government injecting its money inside the economy. That's one way to look at it. If you pay corporate taxes are a leakage. If you pay dividends to foreign shareholders, that is also leakage. The repayment of bank loans shouldn't really affect it, because how that's just within the circular flow. You took a loan, you're paying it back. There's nothing additional from an external body coming inside. So that so you can cross out D. 20, over 1 year, the money income in an economy increased by 6%. In the same period, prices rose by 4%, which means your real income rose by 2, because 6 minus 2, 6 minus 4 is 2. So that's the increase of your real income. So real income did not decrease by 2%; it increased by 2%. And they've given you stuff with regards to the other options are a little weird. So let's look at this first. Your MV is equals to PT. Now, if you think about this, PT is really your national income or your GDP, because T is like total number of transactions can also be substituted with total output, and GDP was the monetary value of that output. So price into total output, that gives you national income. It's not in real form though, but how can we link this to this question? If we say that the money income in an economy, that the national income increased by 6%, but at the same time prices rose by 4%. Oh, what am I doing? It's D. I don't know why I'm getting confused. You don't even have to look at this. Uh, lol. No, just look at it like this. So your real GDP, this was your real GDP, right? The real GDP increase, or the real national income increase, was 2%. So we calculated this by the logic I provided beforehand. So your real is basically what actually rose, right? How much did your output actually increase by? And it actually increased by 2%. So that's simply going to be D. Sorry, I went off on a bit of an irrelevant tangent. So let's quickly check these 10 MCQs. All right, so these 10 MCQs were fine. We got all of these right. So we'll continue this paper in the next video.